He is a character, but he's the first leader for me when I
Yeah.
thought about leaps. Like this man to make this leap. My wife passed away. She got diagnosed with breast cancer when I was about a month old. She passed away when I was three. He had a 3-year-old and a 14-year-old. So think about that leap as a leader, having a dad, having to figure out these two boys, one in pull-ups and one trying to date and drive, like what he had to go through. So it's just a lot in that sort of really started to build out in me the type of leader I was, or just in life, what I would have to do and need,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things, the ways I had to grow. So
Welcome. You are listening to Season 2 of the Bonafide Leaders Podcast, a podcast that exists to inspire legitimate and authentic leadership in the workplace and beyond. And I'm your host, Tim G. Williams. Now, here in Season 2, our theme is Making the Leap. You may call it leveling up, uncharted territory, or expanding your reach. It's those times in our life and our careers when we take on a new challenge. You'll discover how you can successfully navigate your own huge leaps as you hear stories from me and others. This season, I'm excited to be interviewing some exceptional leaders from a variety of fields who'll share some of the big leaps they've made. You'll get a glimpse into what's enabled both their professional and personal success. Now, a quick housekeeping note. If you're finding this podcast useful, remember to subscribe and be sure to leave a rating or review. Welcome in to another edition of the Bonafide Leaders Podcast, and I'm your host, Tim G. Williams. With me today is someone I've known for a really long time, who I'm very excited to spend some time with. His name is Kevin Chadwick. I have, of course, a nickname for him, so listeners, I ask you to give me grace if and when, from time to time, through the nature of our relationship, I might drop that. And the same for Kevin in case he drops one of those for me also. So let me introduce him, and then we will get into it. So Kevin Chadwick is the Managing Director and Chief Campus Officer leading campus operations for Northwestern Mutual at the 6 offices in the DMV area. That is Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. Kevin joined Northwestern Mutual in 1999 as an intern in Dallas, Texas, before graduating with a degree in economics from Texas A&M University in the year 2000. After graduation, he started a full-time financial advisor, helping clients protect, grow, and build generational wealth for themselves and the people they care about. That same year he graduated, he was tapped to consider a leadership role as a college unit director. And in that role, he helped mentor students that joined the office's top 10 internship program. After a 3-year stint with that, he went on to become a growth and development director, where he helped attract and develop full-time financial advisors to the Northwestern Mutual Dallas office. He quickly distinguished himself as a highly successful advisor and leader in Dallas, having a national practice with clients, earning numerous company awards and honors, and building successful advisors. In January of 2011, Kevin accepted the role as managing director of the Northwestern Mutual Austin, Texas office, and became responsible for growth, sales, and operations of the 5-county metropolitan area while leading a team of professionals. And then it was in 2016 where Kevin received the opportunity to partner with the Northwestern Mutual Washington, D.C. offices in his current role. As Northwestern Mutual is one of its exciting and passionate leaders, he brings proven leadership experience, energy, and a deep commitment to serve his advisors, his clients, and his community. Now, Kevin has had the opportunity to serve on many boards through things he's passionate about, including FCA, otherwise known as the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Leadership Fairfax, and Side by Side Kids, to name a few. Kevin enjoys spending time with family and friends, sports, coaching, and traveling. Met his wife, Courtney, in the freshman year of college, and they've been married for almost 23 years. Courtney volunteers her time in the community as a director for community Bible study and as a president of the Reston chapter of Jack and Jill Incorporated. Kevin's son, Kevin Jr., is a second-year mechanical engineering major at the University of Virginia and is a member of the football team. Kevin's daughter, Layla, is a sophomore in high school. She's a class president, runs track, and she also plays volleyball. You can see they are an active family. Kevin and family also love spending time with their black and white golden doodle, Willow. So how about that, Kevin?
right, Miss Willow.
Ke-
So it's funny, Tim. You said a line. I was going to stop you in my bio, and you used the word drop. And with our relationship that we have so long, we used to coach basketball together. Or you were the coach. I was more the strength and conditioning coach, right? Really not the basketball coach, but strength and conditioning. But you used the word drop, and I might hold the story about a you know, a, a document, or not really a document, but more of a clipboard that was sort of
Yes.
thrown,
The
drop. I might hold the
clipboard
story for later.
moment. Yeah, hold that.
I'll hold
Hold
it for
that.
later. I'll hold that.
Do that,
Just
please.
sometimes in leadership, things that happen in leadership. But you just said the word, so
Well,
good to be here, man. Good to be here.
I'm happy to have you. And as we know, anger sometimes gets the best of us, even in leadership
That
roles.
wasn't anger. That was passion. That was
Passion.
passion. That wasn't anger. That was passion. It's just said a little bit differently. It's passion. That's all. We get passionate as leaders sometimes. That's
Yes, we
all.
do. Look,
No words were said. It's just a clipboard. That's all it was. That's all it was. That's all
look,
it was.
Kevin, we talked about this, I think even as early as late last year, the idea of you being a guest on this podcast that I was dreaming about doing at that
Mm-hmm.
particular point in time, and now here we are. So it feels really special to have you here, a guy who I've known literally for like 25 years. It's pretty incredible.
I'm honored to be here, man. I remember as you're a leader always I've looked up to. So I think I've probably told you that before, but it's just fun. Iron sharpens iron being with you. I remember you had this idea of this podcast that you want to create and just watching and listening and some of the guests you've had. So I'm just privileged to be here to hang out with you for a little bit.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can share a few quick nuggets and again, most of the time just mess with you more than anything, but it'll be fun. It's gonna be fun.
We're going to
It'll be
have
fun.
some fun. Yeah, likewise, I have learned from you and I look up to you, even though strangely, you're actually younger than me. And I tell people this all the time. The mentors in your life don't necessarily have to be older or younger
Sure,
than you, can be the
sure.
same age.
Yeah.
It's just different experiences where we learn from one another. And so you've been one of those guys for me.
Hmm.
All right, look, let's kick it off this way. So, one of the things I've been asking each of the podcast guests when they come on is tell me about that dream job or that dream experience, the interim blank. Fill it in. That thing that you could do for 1 week, complete freedom. If you could have that week, what would you do and why?
Yeah, I heard you NBA commissioner. You would love to do. I mean, I knew it had to be something with basketball. I knew that. So I'm going to flip that and say, well, it would be something with football. Most people would probably say commissioner. No, I would rather for a week just be the head coach. I'd love to
Mm,
be the head coach of a football team. I don't need to be the commissioner. Can I? Sure. But I would love to just be a head coach and really sort of shape the direction for a week that a team goes. How you work with coaches, how you work with. I was fortunate to be able to play football growing up. Got a chance to play at Texas A&M as well, where you and I went to school. But just having the opportunity to just give direction to this NFL franchise, this multi-billion-dollar institution, stadiums, but this team that goes out and performs for its fans. Like that just become a cool experience for me to say, and you're the head coach of this team that people look up to, that people take direction from. That would be mine. That would be mine. I think if I didn't do what I did today, I probably would be coaching somewhere.
yep.
So that would be sort of I think for me, my dream job would be for a week, if I can find a team I can coach, that'd be kind of cool.
Do you wish to name that NFL team that would be top on your list, just in case they're
So
listening and decide to bring you in for a week?
So it's interesting. Here's an interesting thing. I'm born and raised in Dallas. Born and raised in Dallas. I now live in Northern Virginia, Washington D.C. area, and I get this question all the time. You don't know there's so many Cowboy fans in the Washington D.C. area. So many, so many. It's surprised when I went to a game. There were both Cowboys fans and Commanders fans, and they always have. So you cheer for the Cowboys, and I'm like, I like them. I do. I like them. I always have. But playing wide receiver, I grew up in the '80s. There was only one wide receiver that I liked back then. It was a guy named Jerry Rice.
Mm,
And so for me, if I could coach the 49ers, it'd be kind of cool for me to do that. It'd be kind of
yeah.
cool. It'd be kind of cool.
Nice.
Some,
Nice.
some 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 good folks there. I'd love to coach 49ers. So not to get my Cowboy folks, upset. Like my son will get very upset when I say that. He's a big diehard Cowboy fan. But
Yeah.
I'd love to coach 49ers in the Bay.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's a beautiful stadium too, having been there and as you know, lived out there. I can tell you it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And I'm sure you would do a great job.
Hmm.
Great job.
I think I do pretty well. I think so. I think so. Yeah, I hired you to manage some things, but there you go.
All right, look.
You're my GM.
So you've made a number of moves. And before we get to talking about these leaps that you've made over the course of your career, which have been numerous and expansive, I want to just quickly run through some of those leaps, but then I want to ask about the background. So,
Yeah.
intern at Northwestern Mutual 1999, you then become a full-time advisor right after graduation. You become college unit director, which got added on to the responsibilities you still maintained as a financial advisor, growth and development director, same thing. You added on that responsibility to what you also needed to make happen as a financial advisor. You go to Austin, become managing director, and now you're the chief campus officer and making things happen up there in Northern Virginia, D.C., VA area. So Maryland area. So I guess the question I've got for you is that before you became this guy who's making these incredible leaps, this professional, what, if anything, as part of your family structure and your background, enabled you to have the kind of success with the leaps you've had up to this point?
Yeah, I think if I think back, I mean, you before we got on, you mentioned my dad, Kevin Chadwick. So, man, I always look up to. They passed away the year I moved to DC, pancreatic cancer. But my dad would always. So he was a fleet service manager for American Airlines, but then left American, opened up a barbershop. And so, as we were growing up, it's kind of hit me right now. As we were growing up, my dad would always say something to my brother and I, but then he would always tell me when he'd give me a haircut in the bathroom of our house. Like I was his walking billboard all the time. But I never understood what he said until I got older. And I think this just sort of ingrained in me this idea of making a leap and just sort of what the journey of it felt like. And the thought he said was this, and it was profound, but again, I didn't understand it until I was probably in my 20s, probably actually until I had a kid. But he told me when I was 3 years old, my mom passed away of breast cancer. He brought my dad back and my brother and I back home, sat us on the bed in my brother's room. He just had a statement. He said, I can only be your dad. That's all he said. And I didn't understand what that meant at the time. He would always say that every time I was getting my hair cut in the restroom as I was growing up. He would always say it. And so I started thinking about that as I got older. Like, what did that mean? What did he mean by that? And he meant it wasn't going to be perfect. He wasn't perfect. He was going to do all he could do. And so when I think about leaps I've made in my career, I knew, hey, I was not going to be ready for it. It was not probably going to be perfect, but I got to do all I could do. So I think that's really helped me just in my structure. My dad was this guy who took care of my brother and I. My brother's 11 years older than me. Mm-hmm. My brother was a corporate exec at Pepsi-Cola, and he moved 9 times in 11 years. So I got to watch him sort of move up in life a little bit.
Yeah.
So that really sort of shaped some of the leaps I've had, is being able to have a dad who thought that way, but at the same time having an older brother who I could watch make leaps in his life. He's 11 years older than me. So
that's awesome, dude.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
Cool story. Cool guy.
You know, Adolphus was a very fun man to be around. And for the listeners, what was cool is that Kevin's dad and I were church members together. We both laugh because there was always something. There would always be a story. He would always have something to say, either before or after service, every time. He's just a man that had a lot of stories, and he was a character, right? It's what you picture for those of us as African Americans when we think about the barbershop and the experience that we all have when you're there. You never know what you're going to hear.
Yeah, so that was actually my first job was in the barbershop. You talk making a leap. I was a 7-year-old. My dad had started this barbershop, and my job was to dress up and shine shoes. That was my job. Literally, I would shine shoes. I still have that original shoe shine kit at my house now. My kids have seen it. Still shine my own shoes when I wear dress shoes. You know, in today's world, you already wear them a lot, but that was my first job I ever had, like making this as a 7-year-old. And part of that job was not only shine shoes, but my dad was my first investor in a Pepsi machine, a soda machine. So he told me, hey, here's some money. I'm going to buy your product. From this point on, you got to figure out how to run it, make sure it's always filled up with soda. This is 7 years old. So he was the guy who, you know, I got to sort of do that on days with him because it was him and I. My brother was gone. I got to listen to stories. I got to hang out with him, ride in a truck with him to Fort Worth and back to Dallas. But it was cool to just listen to the people, how they would talk to him, what they would do. And, you know, it was interesting when he had his funeral about 8 years ago. I don't know, there were 500 people, a lot of people at his funeral. And I just remember one story of a guy who came up to me afterwards about my dad. And this sort of always, this hit me about just who the man was. Mm-hmm. Maybe he wasn't perfect, but just who he was. But the guy said, man, I moved here from Houston, and this guy was a barber, moved to Houston, didn't know anybody. And he said, your dad let me in a shop, let me cut hair, and didn't charge me for a seat. Like, he didn't charge me for a year just because I didn't know anybody. He let me in, and I was like, man, I didn't know that. I mean, I learned this at this man's funeral, like, but just the type of guy he was and what he was all about. So, but he would have fun with you. He would mess with you, tell you a story. He might not remember your name. He'll say he knows who you are, but he is a character. But he's the first leader for me when I
Yeah.
thought about leaps. Like this man to make this leap. My wife passed away. She got diagnosed with breast cancer when I was about a month old. She passed away when I was three. He had a 3-year-old and a 14-year-old. So think about that leap as a leader, having a dad, having to figure out these two boys, one in pull-ups and one trying to date and drive, like what he had to go through. So it's just a lot in that sort of really started to build out in me the type of leader I was, or just in life, what I would have to do and lead
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things, the ways I had to grow. So, but
Yeah.
great man, great man.
You know, it's interesting how life works because these events happen, and while they're happening, two things are going on. One, we have no idea the impact that it's making on us from a long-term perspective. And number
Yeah.
two, we have no idea, sometimes even though it's real painful, the benefits that will accrue to us, the strength that it gives us because of what we can rely on from difficult times in
Mm-hmm.
the past. And I say that for the listeners who's going through a difficult time. For those listening in real time, this is around the holiday season, the turn of a new year.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those can be challenging times. And it's the challenges in our life, I believe, and you're a perfect example, that sometimes take us where we need to go,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well then let's talk about your very first time as a manager, leader of people. I want you to think back to that time. I'm thinking back to mine right now. It's a very vivid memory that I regularly
Okay.
use when I'm doing leadership development, like I was with a group of first time supervisors. And in the first 6 months, I always tell people I was highly ineffective as a people manager and leader. I like to believe I grew a little bit since then, but just can you talk a little bit about just what were your early memories like when you first had a team that you were responsible for? What were those feelings and thoughts, and how'd you process that?
Yeah. I I have to go with the first professional time. I go with the first professional time,
Yeah.
but it was my internship actually,
Mm.
which was interesting. So I interned for a year, was pretty successful for my internship, and I went back to school. And we had some other interns from Texas A&M, and my managing partner at the time, a guy named Al Angel, asked me, "Hey, I want you to mentor and lead the people at A&M." Like 5 other interns. And so I led them out of our meetings were held at my 1 bedroom apartment. So my kitchen table was the office, the conference room, everything there. And so here's what I say that to say, here's what I learned as a leader. I didn't know what I was doing. I did not know it. I mean, I got these other 5 individuals. I knew my role
Yeah.
as a leader, but somehow this guy said, "Hey, I want you to mentor and lead these people." So I was sort of learning to lead on the fly. Yes, I've led on teams, sports,
Mm.
but this was different to
Yeah.
me. And so I was learning how to lead while I was leading. There were some things that sort of innately I knew about people, understanding people at the core and who they are, but still I was learning how to lead at 21 years old as a leader. And so, which then, like I said, afforded me the opportunity to be the college unit director when I graduated and run a financial practice. But man, I was 21, trying to figure it out. This idea of my apartment's going to be our office. We didn't have an office in College Station, but trying to lead these men and women, young men and women, to do the same role that I was doing
Mm.
while we were not in Dallas anymore. We're now in College Station, where we have all these distractions of things that you still had to get work done. And I was 21 doing this. And so when I think back to just then, I was learning how to lead while I was actually in the role leading.
Yeah. And you make the point that's true for all of us is that we don't have all the answers when we first get this thing going, do we?
Oh
Um,
man, no. Oh
there's,
no.
there's a
Oh
lot
no.
we've got to figure out on the
Uh,
fly.
yeah, it was interesting, man. Like I said, that sort of led me to when I think about the day I went full time after I graduated, which was September 11th, 2000. I signed my opportunity to be an advisor with Northwestern Mutual in Dallas. I was a 22-year-old, and at the time in the industry, there were not a lot of women and people of color in the industry of financial services. And so at the time, I was as a 22-year-old, I was the only black advisor in Dallas Fort Worth.
Is that right?
It was, yeah,
I did not
22 years
realize
old,
that.
only black advisor. So when I left Texas eight
Wow.
years ago, I was the most tenured advisor for Northwestern, and I was only 17 years in at the time. And so now that's shifted and changed in the industry, shifted and changed in Northwestern today. But man, the 22-year-old, think about that.
Wow.
In an environment, Dallas Fort Worth, there was no one who looked like me in this industry. So I would walk down the walls of our office and see sort of pictures of recognition. I'm just walking and seeing nobody looks like me. But the crazy thing is, my managing partner at the time really poured into me as a young leader.
This is Al
And
you're
that's why
talking about,
day
right?
one, yeah, Al Angel, who
Yes,
you
yeah.
met. And he said, hey, I'd love for you to run our internship program as the lead mentor. As soon as I started my day one as an advisor, I'm like, dude, I got to grow a business. I own a small business. I got to grow it at practice as an advisor. You have to be the lead like this group. Well, you did it before with those five. You can do it. I need you to build it out. Get a vision, build it out. I believe in. I'll help you. I'm like, again, sometimes you got to step in the role before you even think you're ready for the role, which is what I did. So I had to learn a lot about time management.
Mm.
I had to learn a lot about getting sort of the vision in others and how I can connect them to the vision of things, understanding
Mm.
what's important to them and their mission. I know, I remember the guy who you talked to before that talked about mission statements, or his mission statement.
Right.
But
Byron, yeah.
I was in a class at A&M that talked about that. And I've had a mission statement since I was 21, which mine is always to coach people to dream big dreams of building legacies for themselves and the people they care about. And so that's sort of what drives me every day. So that's how I started to lead. Like, I just wanted to understand, what was your dream of what you want to accomplish in your life?
Yeah.
How do I help you get there? So when I think about my first sort of opportunities to lead professionally, like I said, I've captain on a team here or I've done something there, but professionally, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just one trying to figure out who I was, putting my mask on first, making sure, okay, who am I as a leader? What do I believe? I think
Right.
was important. What do I believe? But then start to really understand, unpack what others want, desire as well. So it was fun and chaotic at the same time. How about that? Chaotic at the same time,
Yeah.
but it was just valuable learning for me as a young leader, especially when I had no one else around me who looked like me, who was doing what I was doing. There was improvisation. I had to improvise a little bit, but
Hmm.
I had to figure it out, which I think some of the best leaders do. They figure it out. So,
Yeah. I like to call that organized chaos. A little bit of a jungle, a little bit of a rainforest going on, and somebody has got to get us out of this place. And that's exactly what you did. All right, let's talk a little bit about relocation, because that's on the
oh,
minds of a lot of people. Should I move with my company? Should I consider going to headquarters? This is a conversation you and I have
mm,
had a few times,
mm,
and I've made that move from the headquarters to the remote
yeah,
office.
yep.
So I just want to hear from you, what was that experience like, moving twice, right? Dallas to Austin,
Yeah,
Austin to DC. What was that like, not just for you as a professional? Let's
yeah,
start there though. Let me start making a two-parter. The first part of this is, what were the considerations that went into making that decision, first of all?
yeah. So I was growing a practice in Dallas with clients, individuals, families, businesses, growing a financial planning practice in Dallas. I was also involved in leadership at that time. Over the last 5 years or so, I was developing a team of advisors that our office attracted, or I helped attract, and I was building them up as advisors too, and sort of managing a team there. I had about 12 advisors who I was directly responsible for helping mentor and develop that full time. All those people were older than me, which was interesting. I started doing that when I was about 24, 25. And so I knew early on in my career that I had a vision after I started leading as an intern that I wanted to be a managing partner at the Northwest Mutual. Like I wanted to lead at a high level. I wanted to make a big impact at a high level. So I knew that early. I just didn't know what it looked like. I knew that early. And so I got this opportunity about 10 years into my role as an advisor. I still today have my practice with clients across the country, but I had the opportunity where I was asked about, hey, would I consider a role in another office outside of sort of our territory? And that's at the time that wasn't, you didn't do a lot of that, especially in the role I was going to as managing director.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't do that. Usually it would grow within, but I was asked, hey, would you consider moving it? So I was known in my office as someone who was a culture changer a bit.
Mm.
That was kind of what I was known for, change culture or help really grow culture. And so as I started to think about that, I had to go home to a woman I love by the name of Courtney Chadwick. I met her a few years ago in the nice little small institution in College Station, Texas, called Texas A&M University, in the library, in Evans Library. If there are any Aggies on here who
Bro,
might
you
know
got
that
it
library,
so specific. And okay,
I
just to
had
add
to,
to the
just in case.
specificity, Courtney James, before she became
Courtney
Courtney
James,
Shea.
that my father would even call her Courtney James until we got married. He called her Courtney James Chadwick until he
That's
died.
right.
That's what he called it. It was the
That's
most
right.
interesting thing. But I had to go home and tell her about this. Someone called me and said, hey, would you consider moving to Austin? Now, at the time, that office wasn't doing as well with leadership. And that was sort of the call of why. And so we had to have this conversation. Faith is real big to us. And so, kind of the first thing, she grabbed my hand and said, "All right, we got to pray about this." And so, because it was not necessarily on our,
Wasn't on the
I
map,
love
right?
this. It wasn't. It wasn't.
Yeah.
And, I love this quote by Andy Stanley. It says, "Direction, not intention, leads to your destination." Love that quote. It was in the direction I was thinking at the time. And she literally grabbed my hand. We got to pray about this. And it's sort of that went on for a couple months. And, we have young kids at the time, and this was not on the radar. And so, and why do I say that's important? I was even told probably not to do it, like from people close to me and my organization, like not to do it. And that was a struggle for me. And I would have to tell my wife about that. And it was interesting. She said, "Do you believe you're supposed to be there?" And that's all she's kind of said. "Do you believe you're supposed to be there?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so. I think so." And so for a while, we just prayed about it. We talked about it. We ended up making the move, but some of the things we had to think through were, okay, we got young kids, schools, Austin, all our families here in Dallas for the most part. She had family in San Antonio, and she still does. So we were closer to some of her family, but new schools, new environment. I mean, I left A&M and came back to Dallas. I made her move. She moved to Austin after she graduated. I said, "Well, if you want to get married, you got to move to Dallas." And she did. And so I thought life was just going to be there because, again, my brother moved 9 times in 11 years. I kind of wanted to sit still. That was my thinking. That's what I wanted to do, but wasn't in the cards for us. And so I had to think about, okay, who are the people there? What do they need? What's going on in that office? I was partnering with an office in Houston and San Antonio to help grow that territory. But what's cool about it is as we started to get closer and closer to having conversations about it, it was never that it was any angst in me about it, but just trying to make sure because I kept hearing, "I don't know if you should do that. I don't know." And something my dad told me years ago when I started Northwestern as an advisor, I had I love my brother, I love my dad. He's my older brother, I look up to him. And he didn't necessarily agree with what I was doing, more because he didn't understand what I was doing. He was corporate exec. He was moving in the world. And I used to mess with him all the time because he would say he's the director of HR marketing. And I would still say, "You still sell soda and chips." Like, that's what you do. And well, no, I'm this and that. I was like, "You still sell soda and chips." And I loved the idea of the impact I get to make on families, individuals, and businesses. And my dad told me something. He said, "Man, you got to live for you at some point. Like, the decisions you make, you've got to deal with those and live with them later. So don't let somebody else make that decision for you." So as it got closer to my opportunity and the time for me to make a decision about it, like I just started to feel this overwhelming peace about it. And we made the leap. We moved down. I was 10 years, 11 years in, this young leader, 31 at the time, young leader running an office in Austin. I was 2.5 hours away from our main office as a part of our footprint. So I really had to run this office like it was like, "You're the guy." Like, and I was, but it was just still different because who I was connected to was far away. It wasn't like our Dallas territory where our offices are pretty close to each other. I was 2.5 hours away from my main office. So I had to build, grow, develop people in Austin. And so it was a big shift for us because my wife had to figure out her identity.
Right.
First time she's moved away, what was her identity in this? I mean, she told me about a book when I told her about this. I'm doing this podcast with you. She told me, "Hey, hello, by the way." But there was a book and I wrote it down that she read that really helped her out. And it was called "After the Boxes Are Unpacked." And it was a great book for her. So if somebody's thinking about relocating or move, doesn't have a spouse, great book for her because it just talked about, and I wrote this down. She said it helped her sort of put a finger on some of the emotions she felt, but some of the ones she didn't really know, and just give perspective to it. It was a great book. I'd never heard of the book, but she did it through some Bible study. It has the faith perspective to it, but it's a great book for anybody to read. But after the boxes are unpacked, and so because what I didn't realize when I moved there, my wife, we were fortunate. My wife hadn't worked outside the home in a while, and so once I got on the ground, I was running. I'm working, trying to build culture and grow leaders, cast vision, do this, and I had to go home. And she's in this new environment, know anybody, and so she struggled for about a year there with identity a bit. And she didn't mind me sharing that, but just with just who she, because I knew what I was doing.
Sure, you
I was
have
working.
purpose.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and so just really that as a leader to me, and I was a little bit blind to that in the beginning, not thinking about that, like what type of leader I need to be for her too,
Yeah.
as well. in that transition. So,
Yeah, so there are a few considerations. Is this good for work? Am I supposed to be here?
hmm
And also, I've got this family who I'm connected to, and I've got to consider them in this whole
yeah,
process. And I just think it's good, especially for me and you, to have this conversation because this is real life. It's one thing
yeah,
when you read about it and it's somebody else's life, somebody else's story, or it's an organizational announcement that you see, oh, such and such is leaving to go such and such. Just know
yeah,
that underneath the surface, there is so much more happening than what's
yeah.
shown in a pretty email. And, you talked about having a couple of months to kind of think about it, pray about it. What do you say to those people, or maybe you've even been in this situation? What happens when you don't have 2 months,
Time.
but you're
Yeah,
given you're
time.
given a week, or you're given 48 hours to make a call? What's your
Yeah,
input to those
yeah.
people?
It's tough for you. No, I think at the end of the day, like I said, I go back to the thing my dad said, it's not going to be perfect. So when you have a short amount of time to make that decision, my belief is, will that role that you're thinking about that you have to consider, does it still lead you to your destination of where you're trying to go? What does that role have for you that you don't have right now? Whether that's lateral or that's a move up, like what does it have for you that you don't have now? Will it get you where you're trying to go at the end of the day? Right? Because we don't want to make this leap to another role if it's not really taking us to the destination we want to
Yeah.
go to.
So Kevin, just
So
to
I think
interrupt
if
for
you
a
have
second,
do what now?
what just to
Sorry about
interrupt
that.
for a second, what I hear you saying is it's subtle, but there has to be a known end destination.
Always, always, yeah. Because I believe when you think about roles that you might consider, at some level, if you're considering a role, it's for some growth opportunity that's lateral and it takes you somewhere. Because why do it if you're not? Why do it if you're not? It's got to lead you somewhere. So when you start thinking about if I don't have a lot of time, I got to make a decision. And I'm fortunate where I own a business. So even when I made this move, I still owned a business. I've never been an employee. I don't think I'm a great employee. I just think so. I've always owned a business. I still think I'm not a great employee. But I think at the end of the day, if you're making this decision, because I got to watch my brother do this too, and I got to watch clients who have to make decisions and moves and everything else. I think you got to figure out how does that fit who you are as a person, that move you're about to make. Because especially if you got a family involved, I think it's a lot easier to be nimble when it's just you by yourself. You
Sure.
might think about extended family that might be around. Can I make this move? But again, I think you've always have to consider like not just yourself, the move. Is it going to, yes, get me to where I want to go, the destination I'm looking at, but also just thinking about what it's going to do to my family. Make this move. Is this the best move for us? Because it'll never be right. Like we can't make it 100% right. And that's, I think sometimes we try to over calculate things.
Mm,
It's just what's best.
yeah.
Like what's best?
Yeah.
What's the best thing I can do for me now? Does this help me get to my
Right.
destination? I'm trying to.
Hey, listeners, if you're busy, and I know you are, but you want to grow your leadership in an efficient and cost-effective way, I invite you to check out my on-demand digital leadership courses at bonafideleaders.com/courses. Now, you're wondering, what do I get in exchange for my purchase? Well, you'll get dynamic teaching and insights, and you'll leave with the tools and practical application you need to be a more effective and impactful leader, wherever you lead, at work or at home. You'll become more confident in your capabilities because you'll know your unique leadership style and how to apply it. You will know how to create powerful and engaging meetings and also how to better integrate your work and life. You'll get that and much, much more. Now, if that weren't enough, with your purchase, as my gift to you, you'll also be added to the Digital Bonafide Leaders community, a real community of leaders like you for networking, best practice sharing, and you'll have direct access to me. Go to the website and you'll find a link in the show notes, and you'll get instant access today. There's also something subtle that you haven't mentioned, but I'll go ahead and sort of spotlight it for the audience, is that you've never talked about money at this point in our conversation. And what I find, in fact, I just posted about this on LinkedIn. One of the guests I
Yep,
was on
yep.
talks about the idea of transaction, right, versus pure passion. And I think that will be out by the time this is recorded. How does money, meaning jumping for that next shiny object, how does that fit into how you think about considerations for the next opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, money's important. Don't get me wrong, money's important. And I think for some people that might be higher on their priority list, which is fine. I can't say that's hey, that's you. But I think at the end of the day, it's the opportunity. Where's the opportunity getting you? Just get you to your destination. Now, it's interesting. When I was thinking about joining Northwestern, I spent about 6 hours in an interview with Al Angel. Like Tim, you've met this guy. He's a kind of profound guy. He graduated from Harvard. He was in advertising, made a career shift to financial services. Later, the guy drove a taxi cab. Like he's just a very smart man. And in 6 hours that I visited with this guy, he never talked about money in 6 hours. We're in a financial services firm. He never talked about it. He just talked about serving others, making others great. You'll be okay. Like, so I think for me, that's the lens which I view things. If I'm making a move, am I making other people better? And if I'm in a move that I can make others better, I think I'll be all right. And I think financially, if I do, yes, it's important, but I think financially for me, it's not necessarily high priority. It is priority. I got a family, I got to live. But I think you've got to think about not just the money, because if I'm chasing the dollar first, to me, if I'm chasing the dollar, you can get there and be frustrated. You can get there and be frustrated. But I think for those that is important. I just believe it might not be the leading cause of why you should make a move.
Right.
Because if that opportunity is just about money, you can get there and be a little frustrated, be a little bit upset, be a little bit in a position where I made this move for money, but it's not the role I should have been. It's not leading me
Yeah.
to my destination I'm trying to go.
Yeah.
But I got paid, cool. But will you be happy?
Right.
Will you be happy?
Right.
So
Purpose.
just try to make moves. Yeah, purpose is cool for me.
Yeah.
I love purpose driven. I love making moves that it's about that at the end of the day.
Yeah. All right. A few years later, you get asked to consider yet another move, this time again outside of the immediate area, and this time outside of the state that you know to be your home, but to go to the East Coast, as you know, where I spent some time in college. And I'm curious how you approached that particular consideration differently, if at all, from the 2011 opportunity.
That was a little tougher. It's the first time I've ever lived out of the state. That was a little bit tougher for me. Funny enough, it wasn't as tough for my wife, though, which was interesting. I don't know. We moved 3 hours from Dallas to Austin. Tougher for her. I was as good with it. Even though she was close to family, move out of state. She was like, oh, you know. But it was interesting. So I was transitioning my office and the equity of my office in Austin, and had the opportunity to move across the country, and was asked, hey, would I consider a couple of different roles, different offices across the country. And it ended up sort of, maybe to you, it was an opportunity in Los Angeles. I call it my beach, fun, and sun opportunity. And then I had cold, snow, and politics in DC after it all boiled it down to all of them that were there across the country. And we ended up, so what made that one probably more difficult, I don't know if it was the decision of the role for me. I knew it could help me continue to get to the destination I want to get to. I was helping run our offices out in DC, Maryland, Virginia, leading a team of folks here, about 60 people I lead, 60 or so, 70 people I lead here, but still managing my practice with clients and everything else. But what made that role probably more difficult, and I had opportunities to consider a little shorter time frame for this one, a little bit smarter about the move. I knew strategically what I was wanting to do, so this move made sense. I was partnering with the only at the time, well, still today, the only Black managing partner in the system at Northwestern, and wanted to partner with him because I thought there was things I could learn if this is the role and I want to take at some point. What made that one difficult was probably the year or so right before that. My dad found out he had pancreatic cancer. He was battling cancer a little bit, kind of went dormant for a while. Pancreatic cancer is one that my daughter just had a teammate's grandfather just passed away on the same day with the same cancer my dad had, November 30th, a couple weeks ago, which was kind of hit me a little bit. But the day I told my dad, I made the decision. And so we went through the same thing. My wife and I, for us, we prayed about that. We talked to the kids. The kids were older, so we talked to them more this time about it because they were older. This is a big move out of the state, moving away from family. My wife's family, they're pretty small family. They're close-knit. And again, if I was just me by myself, it wouldn't have been that tough a decision. It helped me get where I want to go to. Yeah, I'm out. But having to consider family for me, I had to spend more times with my kids a little bit, especially my son. Was at the time he was a little bit older, seventh grade. He struggled when we moved here a little bit too as well. Just seventh grade, middle school, a different time for probably everybody on the podcast if you remember seventh grade. But what made it hard for me was the day I told my dad that I was moving. Before I could tell him I was moving, he told me his pancreatic cancer came back. and he was going to be a chemo like indefinitely. And this was right before my kids and I were together. My wife couldn't make it up, but we were about to tell him, and he told me this from my stepmother. And I was like, oh, I'm about to move to DC.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting, again, going back to who my dad was, and that really helped shape a lot of things in me. My dad smiled and said, man, good for you. That's awesome. And I'm like, I don't know if I could go move. He's like, why would you say that? This guy's battling pancreatic cancer.
Right.
And he's like, why would you say you can't move? And I'm like, dude, like you're sick and you like, man, I don't be like, dude, you gotta go live your life, man. Like what
Hmm.
you can't. I'm here. I'm just a plane ride away. You can come see me. But that was right before I was about to tell my moving, and so that made it a little bit more difficult. That I had parents who were sick.
Yeah.
I had this going on, but like I said, the same process I went through in this decision of to help me get to my destination. I just spent more time with my kids a bit more than anything. My wife she was always supportive in the move if it was helping us get to where we were trying to get to destination
Yeah.
wise. And so it was difficult moving out of state because now we're away from family, first time ever. My brother was used to that. I wasn't. We had one cousin. I had one cousin lived here. My wife had a cousin she hadn't seen in 30 years who lived here. We were fortunate to have that cousin had two kids right in between,
Oh,
two
okay.
daughters. We were fortunate the kids had some connection
Yeah.
because, as you know, Tim, you played basketball growing up. You and I coached basketball together. Sports becomes life. And as my kids got older, my schedule got busier. It was tougher for me to get back home to see family. Like I have no holidays. My daughter plays club volleyball. And for those out there who have kids who play club volleyball, it's 11 and a half months of my life.
She's good, yo. She's
Rough.
she's actually quite talented. And yes, matter of fact, did you tell me about the Volleyball Dad podcast? Was that you who told me about that one? Yes.
I did tell you about that.
Yeah.
Some guys in Houston. I got a chance to meet one of them here in Las Vegas this summer. So it's good brothers down there in Houston. So give it up for the Volleyball Dads podcast on
Yes. Yes.
whatever Spotify podcast, whatever place you listen to your podcast. There you go.
So what was
So
different about this one was the dynamics were different. I mean, you got a very touch and go personal situation with your dad's health. On top of that, you've got kids who are older, which means you want to involve them a little bit more. And then again,
yeah,
Courtney, it was a challenge for her. You have that in your mind, right? As a husband who wants to love his wife well.
yeah,
Man, I
yeah,
don't want it to be
yeah.
hard on her this next time. So, at the end of the day, though, you made that choice, and you moved out to the DMV, as they call it. And my understanding is that you settled in quite well.
I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. Doing okay. Yeah, we moved to Vienna, Virginia. When I first got here, it was interesting. That's my mom said, "You the team Maryland or team Virginia," and that kind of scared me a little bit. But we ended up moving to Virginia. My brother lived out in Columbia, Maryland,
Yep.
and we ended up moving, like I said, North Virginia a bit. Schools were great. Got a chance to get involved some in the community as well. Again, we grew up playing sports. My son was coaching my kid in sports back at home in Lake Travis. I got here, did not coach. I became the dad with the shades on the sideline, didn't coach, but of course I ended up coaching
Getting
somehow.
involved. Yes, you got
That's
involved.
correct.
That's what we'll call
That
it.
is correct. I mean,
Yes.
chain crew is an interesting position. And so, but yeah, so as I was growing offices here, I started to get plugged in the community a little bit more here because this is where we're living. Whether that was Fellowship of Christian Athletes, I became our board chair for that here in the greater Fairfax area. So, how do we influence and impact coaches and sort of make sure that we're delivering the gospel to them and how they're impacting the kids that they get to coach? And so, because it's interesting when you think about coaching, and Tim, you're a great coach and got a chance to coach under you, and you coach people today. You think back to your life, these mentors and coaches spend a lot of time with you and just the influence they have over
Yes.
you. And I think about that with just my kids too, as well. They spend a lot of time with my kids. And I could say something, but a coach could say it. And you know this, right? Coach said, it's like, man, you got to do 10 push-ups. You're going to be so strong. I've been telling them to do 10 push-ups for the last, I don't know how long, but now they listen. And so got involved in Fellowship of Christian Athletes as our board chair. Then at the same time, started to get involved with Leadership Fairfax. And so Fairfax was one of the largest counties, or is the largest county in Virginia. And I love Leadership Fairfax. It just talks about how to build leaders in government, nonprofit, for profit with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. That's something I'm passionate about. How to continue to increase diversity, and I'm starting to get more plugged in Northwestern nationally a little bit, thinking about some of those things I could do in that same breath as well, while I'm still growing in office, while I'm still trying to be a great husband to my wife, and while I'm still trying to be a great dad to my two kids.
Right.
And at the same time, when I moved here, and just to kind of take a step back. I think I was here for 3 months. My dad passed away. And so, yeah. And so just trying to do all these things, but just going back to what he said earlier, like, dude, it ain't gonna be perfect. It's not gonna be perfect.
Nope.
Don't try to be perfect. Like I know
Yeah.
you want to, and everybody does. We've got to sort of do this like it's not
Yeah.
how our lives are built to be. It's messy,
Yeah.
and which is how we make sure we keep our eyes open, be aware of things,
Yeah.
and how that's helping to live. So we did. We're doing okay over here in Northern Virginia, small little country town of Vienna, Virginia.
Yes.
Here,
Yes. And I will pretend as if, I don't miss seeing you more often, but actually we might see you. We'll talk on camera, but we might see you sooner than later, which would be cool because
take it.
I treasure that time, as you know, that we spent with the Chadwick family.
Yeah, man.
So let's talk a little bit about, how should we call it, challenges, mistakes. You've clearly had a ton of success and are doing really, really well. At the same time, we all grow, we become more mature, and with the benefit of hindsight, I'm curious, what, if anything, would you have done differently with these leaps or even just different professional steps that you've taken, the way that you've grown your client base? What, if anything, with the hindsight today, would you do differently back then?
I think early in my leadership, I was so blinders on as a leader, where I could be in a position where, and I always talk about that I love growing leaders. You and I got a chance to experience something together in our lives around leadership conferences where when the leader gets better, everybody gets better. And so I think back to my career, especially early as a managing director running an office, and my job was to grow leaders. And so in our world, my number one job is to make sure I'm growing advisors in the territory and I leave that territory better than I found it for Northwestern Mutual.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the same time, I not only just have advisors in my office, I have team members and staff who support the work that our advisors do. So I think in my early leadership, I didn't recognize that a ton because I was so bent on, I got to grow people like me. I got to grow people like me. That's how I want to make the impact. And I sort of thought and forgot about the other people in our firm that I have to grow as well. And so I got a little tunnel vision, I think, when I thought about growing an organization. But hey, am I growing the people who support the work that we do? Or do I have plans for them or development plans for them to make sure they're growing? And I think early on I was because I had a quick rise of leadership in my practice with clients. I'm seeing some great people and doing some great things. And that felt good. I hired a team member of mine when I was about 9 months in. I was 23 when I hired my first person. Again, I was a business owner at 22 years old. I hired my first team member at 22. And I was growing. And when I took over an office, I had to learn to think bigger and different than just I could run like this. I think for me early on, that was sort of a miss in my development of just understanding the bigger scope of leadership and who I had to become was different than the person I was before.
Yeah.
And I think we sometimes miss that in our leaps. There's probably, if you're making this leap, if you're growing to do something, there's something you have to give up and change. You're gonna be who you are, but to be in this place, you've got to do something a little different. Like I said, you got some qualities that help you get there, but at the same time, how are you still growing in that role? And I think for me at the time, there was some people opportunities that I missed in the development of individuals that I look back on like, oh, my mistakes, whether that's having people in meetings that should have been in meetings to give them an opportunity to learn or whatever that may be. So it's just, I had to take the blinders off to understand the bigger picture of leadership that I was in. How am I thinking about that from an executive level perspective of my leadership? How am I thinking about some of the adaptability I got to have as a leader? Just some qualities of leading a larger organization. When I was used to, hey, here are 5 or 10 people plus my practice, I'm leading like 40 people, 50 people for our environment. That's big. And so thinking about that today, where it's definitely people that I'm leading, or 5 offices, there's 300 people I get the chance to sort of pour into. How am I thinking about their development and what do they need from me as a leader? Or do I have blinders on? So I just think about those things in my early sort of leadership and some of my leaps. What does this leader need to do differently? I'm going to be this type of leader for this role. Do I need to do something different? And more than not, you have to.
Yeah.
So if I look back, those are some mistakes I think I made just in my own development,
Yeah.
understanding the scope of the leader I need to become.
I appreciate you being vulnerable with our audience just for a moment. And I think it's just so important for those listening to understand that there's not a snap of a finger and we just arrive. All of us go through valleys and tunnels, and what you hear and see today is not what Kevin and Tim were 20 years ago. And what we weren't, hopefully, 5 years ago is this continual path of growth, which is exactly what I love to do as an executive coach and a leadership development consultant, is help people continue to focus on ongoing growth. It's a journey.
Mhm.
It's a journey.
What's the quote? Either green or growing or red and rotting, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, are you always growing? It's something I always
Right.
think about.
Right.
So
So one thing that is cool is that of all my podcast guests this season, when we go back and look at the transcript, I think the word leader or leadership is going to show up more in this podcast than in any other, even though everyone else is also leading and doing their thing. So you're smiling and laughing because one of the things that, like you said, we shared is you actually got me hip to the idea of going to leadership conferences years ago. And I used to
yeah,
read books, but I wasn't going to leadership conferences. And this man,
yeah.
Kevin, who I'm talking to right now, introduced me to the idea of leadership conferences. And we used to go to those and we used to share experiences and text back and forth, right, as things were going on. And so I'm curious, right, when you think about financial services, you have CLU, all these licenses, Chartered Financial Analysis, and CFP. That's something we actually haven't talked about. So I'm curious for you, as it relates to growing your business and having prosperity as a financial advisor, what's the connection between business success and leadership in your view?
Yeah, I think the larger you can, I mean, when I say larger, but I think the more you can grow your business, just the more opportunities you have to think about. I call it sort of in our world leadership, and there's a way you give back, right, to other advisors, other offices, other teams. As I became more successful in my leadership, whether that was my practice, clients, I started hiring team members, hired CFPs, hired folks on the team, hired other advisors, other staff people support my practice, the work we were doing. That gave me a platform a bit to sort of think about, okay, how can I take the experience I've gained? How can I take some of the things I've learned? Because right, experience turns into wisdom at some point, where this gray hair I think comes from a little bit. But and how can I share that? And to me, that's where my leadership started to even grow even more, to where I now can think about, hey, I've had some success growing a practice, working with clients across the country, had success growing an office and growing people. Like, how can I take sort of that learning
Mm-hmm.
I've done and now sort of, I love a quote that I heard my third day on campus at Texas A&M. It was from a character coach we had, football guy by the name of Dr. Rick Rigsby was his name. And he had a quote, and I love this quote. It's probably one of the only things I remember from A&M. Maybe I got hit too much, I don't know. But the quote was, make an impact, not an impression. Impacts last, impressions don't. Make an impact, is how he would say it. Make an impact, not an impression. Like, he had this way of how he said it. And so I always thought about that. How do I make an exponential impact as I become more successful with others? How do I sort of, that's why I got in leadership in the first place. And that's important in our industry because leadership changes things, and this financial planning is needed in our industry. I mean, people are more successful day by day by day. How do they have someone to help come alongside them and guide them?
Mm-hmm.
They can trust to help them go from here to here
Mm-hmm.
with their money. And so, how do I take all the experience I learned around that with helping clients and guiding them, leading others to help them grow their practices? How can I lead in a way to make that exponential impact?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's so important as we become successful, our business success. How do we sort of take that wisdom we learn, use it for good?
Yeah.
The way I would say it.
Um,
Others, hopefully, answers your question.
it does in part. I want to maybe make a direct statement and have you
Please
thumbs
do.
up it or thumbs down it, which is that part of why your business is as successful as it is, part of why you've been asked to go make this move and that move, is directly correlated to your leadership capacity and leadership development and growth over time. What do you say?
Got it. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think if I didn't have success, I wouldn't have these opportunities show up, right? I remember when I was transitioning from Austin, and we were at a leadership, sort of our internal leadership conference, and so from the main stage, our corporate execs said I was open to moving. And all of a sudden, we had a break. I'm in the restroom. Like these people are talking. Oh, so you're open to moving? You do it like this? I was like, whoa, 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 stop! Private place, bio break. Can I get just get a moment? Get a moment. Let's talk about the hallway. But yeah, I think your hard work to be successful at what you do, or to be great at what you do, yes, correlates to opportunities to lead and
Sure.
to give back. So I worked hard to for me, like I never want to compare myself to anybody else. I can only compare myself to the lane that I can run in. Am I doing my best? Am I doing that? And so I think the hard work, especially early in my career, that led to hey, growing people, growing a practice, growing others. I mean, I don't think I would have been in Austin if that didn't happen. I know I wouldn't have been here in DC if that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I'm still on track to now become a managing partner the next couple of years. I just want to make some decisions with family and moving. But yes, I mean, success and making sure, am I where my feet are planted is a phrase I love to use. And how am I doing with that? Just where my feet are planted. Am I really focused on the growth and development I need to have and who I need to be? That's directly correlated to some of the success opportunities that I've had in my career.
Yeah.
So it's very important that when you think about the role you're in, whatever there's metrics to it, there's things that you have to get done. Like I never worry about the next role. Just be my feet are planted. Am I going to be great at what I'm doing here? Because what I believe is if I do this well, it's what Al Angel told me earlier. Go make others great, you'll be okay. Do this well, that'll figure itself out. It'll figure itself out. So yeah, I just really focused on how can I be successful where I am and the role I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew if I did that, opportunities will start to arrive and show up. I mean, I had opportunities to leave Northwestern. Now I didn't because of I know what I got here, but success allowed that to happen where I had more opportunities.
Yep.
So
I figured as much, but for the listening audience, I just wanted to ask directly as a means of hopefully reaching those who continue to believe that if I just get my IQ up and if I just get better at my technical skills, then somehow I will matriculate up the ladder.
It helps. It helps, right? It does help, right?
Sure.
But it's interesting. I can be the smartest person will read all these books. You still got to go do. Like you still have to go execute.
Yep.
You got to execute.
End of the day.
And I think at the end of the day, you do. I mean, I'm in a career where it's all about you get recognized and rewarded for your best effort. That type of career. And so, which I'm cool with. But I think at the end of the day, I don't care what type of role you're in. Right. I don't care if you're the smartest person in the room. I don't. It doesn't matter to me.
Right. No offense if you are the smartest person in the room, by the way.
That's cool.
That's not what Kevin's
saying. I never
say
I am. I never say I am. I have people around, I have people on my team who are way smarter than I am.
Right.
And things. I just like to look the part,
Well,
there you go.
You do a good job with that, Brother Kevin. You do it.
But again, end of the day, I think I remember a good advisor of mine, a buddy, and you have your MBA, which is awesome. But a buddy of mine in my office in Dallas, he's in retirement. But I remember him and I working with a client together. And this partner of mine in Dallas, he has his engineering degree, PE in engineering, master's in engineering, changed careers to financial planning about a decade after he was engineering. He hated engineering and changed careers. Very successful today. But I remember him and I working with a client together, a client of mine. And the client was saying his daughter was getting her master's. He said, man, you can have mine. And I was like, first I was scared. I was like, what? He's like, it doesn't be real world work experience.
Yeah.
And I have PE, I have this, I have that. And I was like, oh my gosh, So I think work, it's great to get those things and you should strive to get those things and make sure you're successful at just the work you're doing.
Right.
Being where your feet are planted. So.
Right. And if you're going for the PhD, look, if that's, what you've been purposed to do, go for it, right? Absolutely.
My sister just got hers about a year or two ago. So I applaud her. Also, she's professor at TSU, so I applaud her. She's way smarter than I am.
Yes,
and
there we go.
I love her to death.
If we've learned nothing else before you try to make a jab at me, we have learned that Kevin is not the smartest person in the room.
I am not.
Okay, all right,
not.
Cool.
But I just
still
got
very
there
successful.
First. That's all. I just got there first. That's all it is. Just got there first.
Look, we're going to try to land the plane on this because we literally could talk forever and ever because we just two guys hanging out. Let's try to land the plane on this. We got listeners in maybe three different spots. One, they're contemplating a move right now as we speak.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Second, they have just moved and oh my God, they're drinking from a fire hose. Or they're in the third spot, which is that they're comfortable.
Yeah.
Talk to each one of those audience members who's listening right now. What input and advice would you have for them?
Yeah. It's interesting. I just believe growth is a part of life. This sort of probably goes to all three groups, right? Growth is a part of life. From birth, you've been growing. Like this is just a part of life. And, your growth around you not only changes you, but your growth around you changes those around you. So when you start thinking about these moves you want to make, understand that this next role will probably just help you continue growing. If this is a move that's on the path you want to take, the path you want to go. It's going to help you become the person you want to become, and it'll help you continue to make an impact that you want to make. Now, if I'm contemplating the move, I think the best thing you can do is don't overthink it.
Hmm.
Does it fit your values and who you are? Like, what are your values? That's kind of number one. What are your values? I think everybody on this who's listening to this, if you haven't figured out what are your top 3 to 5 values that are how you make decisions and your beliefs, that'd be the first thing I do. Because if I'm thinking about a move, I gotta make sure my values are aligned with the move I'm about to make. I've seen too many times where they're not, and you start to get this disconnect, and you get there, you want to leave. So first, I think about your values that are important to you, whatever that may be personally. What are those values for you that can align with why I'm making this move? I think that's one. If you start to make a move, understand it won't be perfect. You're going to unpack the boxes. It's going to feel weird. It's a new environment. We might not know anybody. I think like I said, we knew 2 people when we moved to DC. Be you, be authentically you. And that's how I think you will connect at work and in community. And don't be afraid to get out and connect in community a bit, because that's really going to help sort of bridge the gap as you get to this new place, this new environment. If you're moving somewhere, I think if you're contemplating just a role move, then understand, do your work. Something I learned from 10 years ago with the book, the first 90 days, thinking about, what do those 90 days look like? I learned this from 10 years ago, thinking about what do those 90 days look like? How am I assessing my environment? Not just going into, I'm just going to do this. Like, how am I slowing down the speed back up again when I think about that? And if you're comfortable where you are, I love this, I think about this, I do some work in leadership at Fairfax, but we work with folks who are in retirement, and still you're a leader even when you're in retirement, right? We work with folks who are older. But I think about this sort of idea. A plant will only grow to the size of the pot it's in.
Say that one more time, bro.
A plant will only grow to the size of the pot that it's in. You might go to the store and get a packet of seeds, and it says this plant will grow to 12 feet. You water it, you fertilize it, and for some reason this plant's not growing to its potential. And it's interesting, a plant will only grow to the size of the pot it's in. Sometimes that plant needs to be repurposed and repotted to a larger plant, to a larger pot. And the crazy thing is about that, when you take this plant where it's comfortable in its environment and this plant, like it doesn't really want to move, but when you take it, it's here, it hadn't reached its full potential. But when you take it out of this pot, there's a risk there. Risk that plant could die. But I got to think about this when I'm comfortable. So this could be when you think about making a leap, whether that's, in a role in leadership, in marriage, as a partnership, as a parent or grandparent or someone who's retired, thinking about board, whatever it may be. Like, this is risk. I'm moving from where I'm comfortable to risk. I could die, but the potential of my growth has to outweigh the risk. So I'm always thinking about that potential, because a plant will only grow to the size of the pot that it fits in. So make sure you're maximizing your potential. Am I doing that? Am I in the right size pot?
Hey, am I in the right size pot? With that, I think that's an excellent spot for us to wrap up. And ask yourself, am I in the right sized pot? Kevin, thank you for coming on. You've been a part of this early day dream to this point that actually happened today, where you're on the podcast. It's been a long time coming. I'm really happy we're able to do this. Thank you for sharing your nuggets with the listening audience. I appreciate you, man.
Well, I appreciate you, man. I know you poured into me and my crew, Courtney and KJ and Layla. So I appreciate you, because, like I said, you pour into me, pours into them. And but that's what leaders do, right? So, and I just appreciate you. I'm glad this happened. No walking through this with you, and it was this dream and vision you had, and man, now to see it become reality,
Right.
it's just so cool to me. So,
Right.
again, we won't talk about the clipboard you threw down on the ground, and when you got
No, we're not going to do that. And
passionate about anything.
actually, just to be clear, the technical foul is for me stomping my feet. The
I was going to
technical
get to
foul.
that too. I had to add something. I was about to get to that. So you didn't see leadership. You got to let others lead. I was going to get to that. See, clipboard, stump foot, clap. Yeah, it was a pattern to that. Clipboard, stump foot, clap.
Yeah, I got my
And it
money's
was,
worth on that technical foul in San Antonio. I got my money's
you
worth.
did.
On
I'm
that
just
one.
letting you know. I'm letting you know. So there you go.
Awesome.
As the head strength and conditioning coach for your basketball team, I appreciate you allow me to do that.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining. Kevin, thanks for being here, man.
All right, man. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much for listening. If you got value from this podcast, don't keep it a secret. Subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share it with someone you know. Until next time, remember, our world is starving for bona fide leaders. Take your leadership to the next level by applying at least one thing you heard today.